I will call this meeting to order, and this is the Medicine Hat City Council organizational meeting that we will start with.
Through the chair, that council approve the mayor's appointments of council members to standing and special committees of council under the procedure bylaw number 2270, and that council approve the mayor's appointments of council members to external boards and quasi-judicial tribunals.
I can second that.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. And that's unanimous. And I will now adjourn that meeting. And now I will call the regular Medicine Hat City Council meeting to order. And we will begin with a moment of prayer or reflection. Thank you. And now I would like to begin with the city's land acknowledgement. The City of Medicine Hat acknowledges that we live and work on treaty territory. The city pays respect to all Indigenous peoples and honors their past, present, and future. We recognize and respect their cultural heritages and relationships to the land. Now moving on to item 5, council member announcements. So this section is an opportunity for councilors to provide announcements or recognition that they wish to. Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. I would like to recognize and commend the City of Medicine Hat Gas Utility as the recipients of 3 awards in recognition of their safety and customer service. The awards from the Canadian Gas Association Safety Awards for Excellence included the Corporate Safety Award for Employee Safety in recognition of the city's perfect employee safety scores, and the Corporate Safety Award for Vehicular Safety, recognizing the organization's track record for reducing vehicle damages over the past year. The city also received the Michael Mulcahy Award for Excellence and Innovation in Customer Care and Service for significant achievement by members of the natural gas delivery industry in the area of innovation and service to natural gas customers. I know that both the city as an organization and our community at large are well served by our dedicated and skilled utility employees. Congratulations to our team on this well-deserved recognition, and thank you for your commitment to excellence in serving your community. And I'd just like to draw attention to some of the employees here in the galley, if you want to give a little wave. Thank you very much.
If I can, Your Worship, I can maybe just give the names, if I can.
Yes,
yeah,
please.
so with us tonight we have Grayson Motch, Director of City Operations, Rob Ferguson, who's the Manager of Gas Distribution Operations, Andy Moon, our Gas Operations Superintendent, and Chris Clamola, who is our Gas Operations Foreman. Couldn't be more proud to represent this group of individuals and their whole teams. This is a really special award, and very much appreciate their dedication to safety in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well stated, Councillor Van Dyke. Are there any additional council member announcements? And to those members of our gas department, we won't be offended if you decide to leave. Okay, so moving on to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions? Seeing none, the agenda is adopted. Item 7, adoption of the minutes of the regular city of Medicine Hat Council meeting dated October 3rd, 2022. Are there any errors or omissions? I believe Councillor Robbins has one.
Yeah, I do just a minor one under section 3. When we moved back into an open meeting, it's got a notation on the bottom about a vote. And looking at our previous council minutes, it had never been recorded a vote because we were in closed. So if we could just, what drew my eye to it was the 4 said 0, but it should just not be in there at all, that piece, I think. So if it could be amended in that way.
Okay, seeing no further errors or omissions, we will adopt the minutes as amended. And now we have 2 public hearings before us this evening. Item 8.1, bylaw number 4693, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend land use bylaw number 4168 to redesignate 155 Ash Avenue Southeast from community services to high-density mixed use. Did we receive any submissions on this item, City Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through the chair, I believe we received one submission, but it was late, so it doesn't, it will not be addressed today.
Thank you. And so the way that we will do this is we'll introduce city staff, Robert Sissons, Manager, Planning and Development Services. He will give us a presentation, and prior to questions, we will call the public hearing to order, and at that time, we will receive further presentations and submissions. Welcome, Robert Sissons.
So good evening, Your Worship and members of council. So as mentioned, my name is Robert Sissons. I'm the Manager of Planning. I'm here to present Land Use Bylaw Amendment 4693, which can be described as the arena lands rezoning. So here's just a summary of the presentation for tonight. I'll provide some brief details about the rezoning, then a little bit more background on the site and some policy context. I have a few photos that identifies the site, and to conclude, I will present administration's recommendation. So this is an application to amend the land use bylaw, so specifically to rezone the site at 155 Ash Avenue Southeast, also known as the Arena Lands. The site is currently designated as community services, which was appropriate for when the arena was in use. However, there are limitations within this land use district for future redevelopment, so such as it doesn't allow for residential development. The proposed designation is our new high-density mixed-use district that was added to the land use bylaw earlier this year. So the site is the location of the decommissioned Medicine Hat Arena. There's also a parking lot on the western portion that is being currently leased to the YMCA. The site is identified as a key location for future redevelopment in both the municipal development plan and the River Flats area redevelopment plan. So I'll provide a little additional context of adjacent land uses and zoning. So to the north and east is the South Saskatchewan River, the berm and trail, and athletic park. So these areas are zoned as open space. To the south and west, there are various recreation and public institutional buildings, such as the Curling Club, the YMCA, Medicine Hat Police Services, and the Medicine Hat Remand Center. So these are all zoned as community services. And then if you go further to the south is residential development as part of the River Flats neighborhood, and that's a mix of medium density residential and low density residential zoning. So this is a map of the subject lands and adjacent areas. I'll just note that a portion of the site will be further subdivided off this area for a road right-of-way, so that's Ash Avenue, and then also for a public utility lot, which would be a portion of the berm. But you can see the site highlighted in blue on the map. And this is just a map of the zoning of the subject lands and the adjacent areas. So the light blue is community services, the green is open space, the orange is medium density residential, and the yellow is low density residential. So this rezoning does align with Council Strategic Priority 6.8, which states that we should maximize infill and brownfield development and revitalization of existing areas, so including by implementing a brownfield redevelopment strategy. So this site would be considered an infill project, and the designation of high-density mixed use could be considered as maximizing the potential of this site. A major redevelopment program would also substantially revitalize the surrounding area. So in terms of policy context, this SSRP, so the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, that's a really long name for a plan, so it doesn't really fit on the slide, but it's a regional plan for essentially the area south of Calgary, and they outline general principles for municipalities to fall in line with. So I've listed a few here, but reducing that rate of conversion of undeveloped state to permanent, building at higher density, increasing the proportion of new developments through infill and redevelopment, utilizing existing infrastructure, reclaiming or converting previous lands that no longer are required, and providing information to make decisions that support efficient land use. So use of this site for redevelopment at higher densities and utilizing the existing infrastructure that's in the ground today are in line with those main policy statements. The municipal development plan identifies the site as the eastern portion of the urban core that is located within the city's center sector. A MIMH priority from the Vibrant Downtown strategic goal is that the downtown, and this includes this particular site, evolve over the long term into a higher density mixed use district that specifically provides desirable opportunities for urban living. So redevelopment of the site would substantially contribute to the number of people living in the core in this prime location. And this is just a map from the municipal development plan that identifies the city center sector, and the area highlighted in yellow shows the location within that area of the site. So the arena lands is within the boundaries of the River Flats area redevelopment plan. So this plan's approximately 10 years old at this point. And it's specifically within the area called the Old Town neighborhood. So the urban structure concept for this area targets higher density to support an additional population of approximately 1,100 people or 440 dwelling units. To achieve higher density, the correct zoning must be in place, and that high density mixed use district allows for this to occur. And I'll just note that the 1,100 people is not for this particular site, but for that larger area in and around the arena lands. So just as a long-term evolution of the area. So this concept is from that area redevelopment plan, and it helps to illustrate what that higher density could look like and to provide a sense of scale. But I'll note that this is not what is being proposed for the site, just so everybody's clear on that. And any development proposal are addressed through development permit applications and not rezonings. So just some final points to consider. So the higher density mixed use zoning is the only land use district outside of direct control that can support what could be considered the highest and best use of the site. So the highest implying projects that are considerably denser than what we would find in our suburban areas. And the best use implying a predominantly residential building where with some complementary commercial opportunities and components. So as this is a rezoning, as I mentioned, any development plans or other stages of the land development process are not considered at this point. Today we're simply focused on what the zoning should be for this particular site. So here's a picture of the site looking towards the east, so roughly from the YMCA. And this is a picture of the site looking towards the northwest. I'm pretty sure everybody here is quite familiar with the site. And then this aerial imagery just provides some further perspective on the scale of the site and the surrounding context. So administration's recommendation is that through the Municipal Planning Commission, that City Council approve bylaw number 4693.
Thank you. I will now call the public hearing for bylaw 4693, bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend land use bylaw number 4168 to redesignate 155 Ash Avenue Southeast from community services to high-density mixed use. Before I ask if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak for or against this bylaw, are there any questions specifically for Manager Sissons? Councillor Knodel.
I guess. Thanks, Mayor Clark, through the chair. My question is about the length of time required if we do change the bylaw today and say in 2 years, nothing happened as a consequence of this bylaw change, and we had an offer from, this is all theoretical, of course, this is just in my mind. If we had an offer from a company that wanted to build something more community service oriented and we wanted to revert back to the old bylaw, is there any regulation that says we have to wait this amount of time, etc.?
So through your worship, there's no specific holding time, if you will, on this bylaw. Council could change it next month if they so choose.
I have one question. What impact, if any, will this have on the river or riparian area adjacent to the river?
So through your worship, the site that we're talking about is actually on what I would refer to as the dry side of the berm. So it's already well outside the natural riparian area.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers on the speakers list, I'm going to ask now if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak for or against this bylaw to please come down to the podium and state your name as well as whether you will be speaking for or against the bylaw. And if you wouldn't mind spelling your first and last name as well. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Corinne Korf, first name Corinne, last name Korf. I'm speaking in regards to the map that I received, and it looks as if you're cutting off the road and giving it to this site. And I'm concerned because the road that goes around the YMCA and then past the back of the Medicine Hat Police Service and then past the back of the curling rink provides access to Athletic Park from that side. And if that is discontinued and blocked off, where is the traffic going to flow to the park then? And because it's all residential otherwise, I thought it might cause issues.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Manager Sissons if he could pull up the map that you may be referring to and address your question, and if you have a response after he's addressed that, please feel free. We'll call upon you again.
Yeah. So through your worship, this map probably is the easiest one to visualize this. So right now, as was mentioned, the zoning currently extends into the road right away. This is basically a legacy issue. The road currently today technically is dead ends basically right behind the Medicine Hat Police Service. There is an active subdivision that would formalize that road right away on our newly constructed road. So that road will continue through there in the future. When that road is registered, then that zoning will be removed from that particular, where the road is.
So is it the case if we look at the subject land, it would be a almost perfect rectangle, but for like a little outcropping that looks like it should be the continuation of the road? Is that where you're talking about the road right of way?
Yes, through your worship, that's correct.
Would you like an opportunity to respond, or did that satisfy your inquiry? Okay. Thank you. So the response, just for the record, I'm not sure if we have to speak into the mics or what, but she indicated that if the road remains open, then that satisfies the inquiry. Thank you. For a second time, is there any member of the public who wishes to speak for or against this bylaw? If so, please come down to the podium, state and spell your name, and whether or not you will be speaking for or against the bylaw. For a third and final time, if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak for or against this bylaw, please come down to the podium, state and spell your name, and whether you'll be speaking for or against the bylaw. All right. I now declare the public hearing closed.
So, Your Worship, at this time, I'll move bylaw number 4693. I wish it read a second time.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? Or debate? Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, I think, first of all, what we have before us is the next iteration, the next step towards what we hope is a future high-density mixed use. I don't think there are too many people in the community who aren't aware of previous and current council's desire to see higher density in this area. It's been kind of a legacy of the last term, but this step, obviously moving it from community services to high-density mixed use, is signals, I hope, the prospect of movement on this development sooner than later. I will just take a moment to recognize the fact that we, I don't know, 20 years ago, the government made provision for us to use unusual powers or abilities to compensate and motivate the use of enhancement of brownfield developments such as this one. We are one of the, I think, first communities to exercise that, and certainly this is a worthy project of moving head on. Those are steps that have already been taken, but I hearken back to that because again, it's a signal of sometimes we get a lot of questions in the public, how long does this take, or when's the next step? And the biggest thing they're looking for is the wrecking ball, taking down the old arena. And again, that being a signal that there's redevelopment underway or soon underway. So again, this is just the next step of that storyline, that narrative, and I'm looking forward to seeing not only a redevelopment of a property that's been sitting empty and somewhat dilapidated, but also the ability to see the River Flats redevelopment plan moving forward. That's a plan that was carefully orchestrated and crafted over a 5-year period many years ago, but it has real life meaning today. And so the prospect of high density development there will allow us to check off on our plans that we have fulfilled that mandate, and looking forward to the community seeing this kind of redevelopment hopefully very soon. Thank you.
Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Through the chair, there are several benefits in my perspective in regards to this evolution of the property in front of us. So I think that we want to see more vitality and vibrance vibrancy along the river, and having people in that area is one step, or more people living in that area and right along the river is one step into creating a little bit more momentum in developing out the vitality along the river. So that's one thing. I also think infill development, like Councillor Dumanowski was talking about, is something that is beneficial for our community. It doesn't require urban sprawl. There's the high density allows more people to live in an area, which is beneficial for services in that area, including transportation. So there's a lot of overlap in this particular project, or this particular transition in bylaw status, that I think will do well for that area. And there's proximity to the historic clay district in that area. There's many benefits that I see as a result of this. So I'm glad that it's moving forward, or hope to see it move forward.
Councillor Hirsch?
Well, Your Worship, I entertain a lot of questions in the community saying, when are you knocking down that arena? And quite frankly, and this is just the first step towards that. And I think people need to understand that no development can occur until everything gets lined up. So it is a bit of a domino effect that's going to happen. This is just step one, and then you're going to see, again, the rezoning. It's important for people to understand that this is not the final iteration of what it's going to look like. This is, quite frankly, the change of the land as far as the classification goes. So I look forward to the next step in the evolution, that being maybe a development plan, and it'll be a little bit more focused on what that's going to look like. What it does mean for the developer is that there's a bit more certainty for them to enact their plan as they see fit. So this is an important step for the developer and the City of Medicine Hat. I'm very happy in the fact that this is something that's being entertained by our council, because it does lockstep along the division and the direction of this council that we believe in brownfield developments. There is all sorts of reasons why. It's a service lot already. We don't have to extend any more dollars out into the community to dig up and put out new pipes and electricity, et cetera, and sewer, et cetera. So what I like about it as well, it's really close to, as we talked about, the densification of some areas is helpful, because it's right next to a major thoroughfare. The walkability is evident. It's going to be an enhancement to our downtown with people living closer to the downtown. So from those type of reasons, I'm very happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Hyder?
Thank you, Mayor Clark, and through the chair. I'm just probably going to echo some thoughts of my colleagues, but I'm truly excited and look forward to the next steps of having this area being developed and what could possibly be a wonderful place to live. We're also very fortunate it'll be down by our beautiful South Saskatchewan River, as well as the nice new, brand new, enhanced home of the Medicine Hat Mavericks, which just finished wrapping that up last year, and how that that organization and that place looks just beautiful. So I'm sure with in the future it'll be a really nice place to be. And thank you, Managing Citizens, for all your work on this.
All right. I, too, will be supporting this amendment. However, I do feel, probably like many members of the community, a bit of sadness about what this means for our former arena. Although that decision was taken previously, and this is the direction we're moving in, I really like to see the higher density and echoing the comments of many others, the infill development and what that can do for our overall financial viability in the long term. With that, we will vote. And that's unanimous.
Your Worship, I beg leave to read third reading for bylaw number 4693 and wish it passed. Thank you.
Any debate or comments? Seeing none, we will vote on the motion. And that too is unanimous, and bylaw number 4693 is passed. But moving on to item 8.2, bylaw number 4713, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend land use bylaw number 4168 to redesignate 1752 10 Avenue Southwest as General Industrial District. We will have Manager Robert Sissons come and introduce the item before we move into the public hearing. Welcome, Manager Sissons. Long time no see. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as mentioned, I'll just read my name in for the record. Robert Sissons, Manager of Planning. This is for presenting Land Use Bylaw Amendment 4713, which can be described as the airport lands rezoning. So just here's a summary of the presentation for tonight, similar to the previous presentation we saw. So I'll provide brief details about the rezoning, some background on the site and policy context, some photos of the site, and then staff's recommendation. So this is an application to amend the land use bylaw specifically to rezone the site at 752 10th Avenue Southwest, also known as the east node of the airport lands. The site is currently designated as airport district, and this zoning allows primarily for airport-related land uses. It also does not allow for your typical industrial operations that you would see in some of our industrial areas. The proposed designation is for General Industrial District. So this parcel of land has been leased for quite some time now to the adjacent property owner and is surplus to the needs of the Medicine Hat Regional Airport. The site is currently used as an RV storage, and for further development to occur on the site, a designation to a more appropriate zoning district is recommended. The site currently has a conditional subdivision approval, and the intent is that this parcel is subdivided off from the airport lands and will be consolidated with the adjacent parcel, and the rezoning was a condition of that approval. So some context of adjacent land uses and zoning. To the north and west is the approach area and main runway of the Medicine Hat Regional Airport. This is zoned as airport district. To the south and east are various light industrial uses, and these are all zoned as general industrial district. And then if you go further to the east, there's also some business industrial zoning as well. So this is a map of the subject lands and adjacent areas. The area in blue is the subject site. And this is the map of the zoning of the subject lands and adjacent areas. So the dark purple is general industrial, and the light purple is business industrial, and the gray is airport district. So this rezoning does align with Council Strategic Priority 6.8 as well as the last one, which states that we should maximize infill and brownfield development and revitalization of his existing areas, including by implementing a brownfield redevelopment strategy. So this site would be considered an infill and further intensification of the site as it is currently minimally used with only temporary land uses. The municipal development plan identifies this site for future light industrial lands, and it is located within the west employment sector. The industrial typology is consistent with what would be proposed here. So here's a map of the west employment sector. The area highlighted in yellow shows the approximate location of the site within the future industrial lands. and I apologize for these maps, the typing is quite small, but these are available on the city's website under the municipal development plan if people would like to read through it. So this site is within the boundaries of the airport area structure plan, and more specifically the east node, as mentioned earlier. This area is intended to provide for opportunities for further light industrial land development and airside industrial and commercial land uses. And then some additional considerations with this particular site. So it is located within the boundaries of the airport vicinity protection overlay within the land use bylaw, so that's Schedule E, and also within the boundaries of the municipal airport zoning regulations bylaw 4294. So essentially what this means is that there are limitations on the height of buildings that can be constructed depending on where they are within the site. So there's an area what's called the strip surface reference point elevation, and it's 716 meters above sea level. And basically from that point, which is, you could generally consider that the runway surface, that elevation point, the strip surface is the larger area surrounding the runway. And from there, it slopes down, the topography slopes down towards 10th Avenue. So the majority of the site is impacted by this, and a 1 in 7 height limitation, as it is was within the transitional surface area. So if you think of an inclined plane of 1 in 7 that leaves away from the strip surface, that provides that limitation on height. So we would take the grade height of whatever structure is proposed, and then we would look at it within context of that plane. A portion of that site is also within the approach surface area that's much more restrictive, and it has a 1 in 50 height limitation. So that means for every meter in height upwards, it has to go out 50 meters. And the outer west edge of this proposed property is within the strip surface area. So that would have a maximum elevation of below the 716 meters. So any proposed buildings would be reviewed at the development permit stage for compliance with these regulations. They would also be circulated through to the airport as well at that point in time. So here's a picture of the site from across 10th Avenue looking towards the west. And here's a picture of the site looking towards the southwest. So you can see the RV storage that is currently occurring. And you can also see, if you look closely in behind the RVs, that there is a slight hill. So you can see how the runway surface is elevated above the site. And this aerial imagery provides some further perspective of where the site is, especially as it relates to the airport runway. So administration's recommendation is that through the Municipal Planning Commission, that City Council approve bylaw number 4713.
I will now call the public hearing for bylaw 4713, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend land use bylaw number 4168 to redesignate 1752 10 Avenue Southwest as General Industrial District. Councillor Hirsch?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a question with regards to the designation of the airport lands versus general industrial. So can you maybe just help council understand the differentiation between airport, and I know it's more restrictive, but maybe just enhance us a little bit on our understanding?
So through your worship, so obviously with the airport district, the purpose and intent is to, first and foremost, to ensure the functional aspect of the airport. So it allows for things like the airport hangars, the airport operations and facilities. There are some other discretionary uses that are allowed within the airport district, And those are primarily geared towards the north node. So if you think about the entrance to the airport, there's various commercial sites, so things like a hotel, parking lot, education institutions that are related to aviation, industrial operations as they relate to storage or shipping of materials, for example, for air transportation, gas station. Those are some of the types of uses that you would see there. But what is missing is your standard industrial operations. So if you're wanting to do a manufacturing or warehousing or one of those larger types of typical industrial uses, you would have to go to an industrial zoning. So the general industrial district does have industrial operations as one of the listed uses. And that would generally be what is typical of that area. But it does allow for other types of uses, including motor vehicle service stations, vehicle and RV sales, industrial support services, even retail and consumer services and restaurants. So it's a little bit more of a broad use. You would typically see this in Briar Park, the Southwest Industrial Area. Those are the two main ones.
Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark, through the chair. My question is maybe a little bit more juvenile, but I'm curious about the evolution of moving from this bylaw process to rezoning and then what the future might hold or what we've seen in the past for a situation like this. So we currently have is the tenant currently on the property at this at the present day? The rental?
So they currently lease the land, yeah.
Right, for the last 25 years, it said, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming.
And are they still leasing the property at this time?
Yes, so that's part of the process is that, if we were to look at consolidating this parcel of land with the larger parcel, you would have then a situation of split zoning, which is not really an ideal situation. So that was one of the recommendations through the subdivision process, that it be given the consistent zoning of the adjacent parcel.
So the tenant will likely have to leave in order for would this property be posted for sale by the city in order to move into a different development of some sort? Is that kind of the trajectory that we're headed?
So through your worship, so the next process would be that, and that's really outside of planning and development services area, the land sale part of things, but that would generally be considered a next step is first you do the rezoning and subdivision, and then you have a parcel that can be developed, and then that would go through a sales process, and then you would see development permits.
Last question, are you okay with me? Follow up? How does, being that we're going through the bylaw process, at this stage, does it affect the current tenant, or would it be at the point where, say, IMH would be posting the parcel would be posted for sale, and then they would have to find some sort of resolution with the current tenant?
So through your worship, the rezoning process wouldn't affect any current use of the land in terms of that, whatever use they had ongoing, provided that was legally permitted, it would continue on as a legal non-conforming use if it wasn't allowed under the general industrial district. But under the general industrial district, storage of RVs is a permitted use. So that could continue on. In terms of when that lease would be terminated, that's really a question more for IMH.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you, and through the chair. There has been a lot of community discussion over the years regarding the possible future airport expansion, and I'm wondering if rezoning would compromise the ability to do that in the future. And not just from a runway perspective, but in the event that we would have larger aircraft landing and taking off, would rezoning this and potentially selling it reduce our ability to do that down the road?
Managing Director Maines.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Van Dyke. We don't believe so at this time, Councillor. The primary plans for the runway expansion were incorporated into this discussion this evening. And we have no concerns at all about that. We believe that that future is in a different direction and a different magnitude than this particular site. So it's fine from a future planning perspective, but thank you for the consideration on that.
Councillor McGrogan?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation. I just, maybe a curiosity, I'm looking at slides, I think it's 7. Slide 7. It shows an area outlined in purple, and this, it looks like a very unique piece, and I'm just wondering if there's any historical kind of perspective on why that piece wouldn't have been included in that actual rezoning, I guess, in the first place. And it may have to do with your elevation and slope issue, which you presented in another slide, but do you have any historical context about why that unique sliver of land is different from the other ones in that area?
So through your worship, so that the particular parcel that we're talking about tonight, it's always remained as part of the larger airport lands, so which is about the size of a quarter section, and that was why it was likely given that zoning at that time. Any of the uses at that point were just temporary uses that they were leasing to the adjacent landowner. So when that zoning was determined almost a decade ago, that would have been due to that reason, is that it was part of that larger parcel and to avoid that split zoning process.
Right. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak for or against this bylaw, will you please come down to the podium, state and spell your name, as well as whether you will be speaking for or against the bylaw. For a second time, if there are any members of the public who wish to speak for or against this bylaw, will you please come down to the podium, state and spell your name, and identify whether you will be speaking for or against the bylaw. For a third and final time, if there are any members of the public who wish to speak for or against this bylaw, please come down to the podium, state and spell your name, and whether you will be speaking for or against this bylaw. Seeing no speakers, this public hearing is adjourned.
So, Your Worship, at this time, I'd like to move for bylaw number 4713, and we should read a second time.
Second.
Are there any comments or debate? Councillor Dumanowski.
Well, Your Worship, being one of the relics around the table for a while, I'm just, my thought was actually where Councillor Van Dyke was, and perhaps that people in the public might question the validity is a strong word, but the intention of changing a zoning that might find itself in conflict in the future with a runway expansion or fetter some future council financially and otherwise by making a change that could be perceived as unnecessary. But I can tell you that many years ago we started acquiring lands at the opposite end of the runway because we thought there was going to be a need for such a purpose, and it made sense to do so when the dollar was going to benefit us through a cost analysis. But we found out, or in my simple version of understanding, that as these developments occur and the need or the perceived need for runway expansions occur, the fact of the matter is these aircraft that come in don't necessarily require longer strips to take off and land upon. Their ability to land and take off in a more confined space is kind of grows and develops commensurate with the expansion of flights and carriers. So so in simple terms, we won't necessarily need a bigger runway in order to accommodate that. Well beyond any of our timeline here, there's the possibility certainly of the need to do something in a more significant way, but it likely will not be in this exact area. So that's a future consideration many decades down the path. But at first when I saw this, I thought, well, it just seems unnecessary, but it has been demonstrated today through the manager of planning that we won't need to be concerned with that. And in fact, in the meantime, it does benefit us from the standpoint of brownfield development. So again, another feather in our cap to be creative and identify surplus lands or lands that can be potentially rezoned to the benefit of the taxpayer.
Councillor Hirsch?
Well, Your Worship, speaking in favor of this, Councillor Dumanowski refers himself a bit of a relic, but I actually was around the table at that time as well, and I don't consider myself a relic, maybe. Anyway, I think it's interesting that we are moving forward. There's the proverbial bigger fish to fry, quite frankly, was the realignment of Highway number 3, because it was about the length of the landing way versus which arguably this is a little bit off the beaten path. So, but certainly without you know, the due diligence of staff and administration looking at it, there's been a litany of information relative to this airport overlay. I'm happy in the fact that this still is within the overlay, so there is a little bit of strings attached to this subject land, and the fact that the building has to be somewhat shorter than what normally could happen within a general industrial area. This is another testament to the fact that this council believes in the brownfield utilization of services that are already in play again. And I think this is a good illustration of what can be done. I guess the argument is the subject land is in the back end of the airport, which it just happens to be adjacent to an airport, because we all know, you know, the business end of the airport is on the I guess it would be the north side. So I'm very comfortable moving this forward. Thank you.
Councillor Canoto?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. So I have a couple different thoughts about the benefit of this moving this bylaw forward. So I'm glad to hear Councillor Van Dyke ask if there was any interruptions or any negative impact on growth of the airport. I'm eager to see that happen. It's really nice to see, and again, as a tangent, new signage and some energy being infused into that particular area. So knowing that this is only a complement to the area and not deconstructing that particular momentum. When it comes to our business community, location, when it comes to the economic benefit, I think that this is a really strong location for any sort of business property. There's all sorts of different industries in that area, and I think that when it comes to collaboration and cooperation amongst businesses and even just access, the general access is fantastic in that lot. So I look forward to seeing what happens in that particular lot. We as a community truly have limited space of land, and I know that truly in southern Alberta we've got vast amounts of space, but I think if we want to be responsible as we move forward into the future, if we can again promote brownfield development and see what we have to offer and make use of it over and over again, that is the best thing in my perspective. And that's all.
I will be supporting this as well, but as echoed previously, my main concern was with respect to the future vision of the airport. And I hope to get us a better sense of what our medium and long-term vision for the airport is, because it is an incredible asset that we have as a city. And with that, we will vote. The vote is unanimous.
Your Worship, I move that bylaw number 4713 be read a third time and passed.
Debate or comments? Seeing none, we will vote.
Your Worship, point of order. We just need a seconder.
Yes.
I'll second.
Thank you. We will vote. The vote is unanimous and bylaw 4713 is passed. Moving on to item 9.1, Audit Committee. Item 9.1.1, we have meeting minutes from October 4th, 2022.
Your Worship, I move the meeting minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on October 4th as presented.
And I'll second that.
Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, we will vote. And the motion to adopt the minutes are passed. Councillor Hirsch, as chair of the audit committee, do you have any meeting highlights that you would like to communicate to the public?
Certainly, Your Worship. We had a very good meeting. The intention of the audit committee is to ensure that the processes and policies of the City of Medicine Hat are followed as enacted. In fact, we had a meeting with KPMG, which is currently our accounting provider, who's doing their annual audit. So it was a formative meeting that we had with the auditors, and what transpired from it was basically a game plan from which how the audit's going to be presented, which is fairly standard year over year. I do recognize that we've always been a annual award winner. In fact, got the Triple Crown, I think, last year, I believe it was, for financial reporting, et cetera. So in discussions with the team lead from KPMG, they were in fact very happy with the past performance of the City of Medicine Hat, with becoming very forthcoming with information, very collegial in the audit, not adversarial, of course, and really for the most part, we're very happy that KPMG will, and I'm quite frankly going to be very confident that KPMG will come back with a very strong record of our work. So looking forward to the next phase, which will be the audit. So a lot of moving parts. They will be coming to the City of Medicine Hat, reviewing some of the policies and procedures, and then from there, affecting their audit and decision on our practices. So stay tuned.
Thank you. And moving on to item 9.2, Energy and Infrastructure Committee meeting. We have at 9.2.1, meeting minutes from October 6, 2022.
I move that council adopt the minutes of the Energy and Infrastructure Committee meeting held on October 6th, 2022, as presented for the corporate record.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. And that's unanimous. Moving on to item 9.2.2, Councillor Van Dyke, as chair of the Energy and Infrastructure Committee, do you have any highlights you would like to share with the public?
Yes, just one, thank you. I just wanted to draw attention to the right-hand turn lane at Dunmore and Spencer that's going to be beginning soon. This is a pilot project to assess whether this should be a permanent traffic change. So I think it's humorous that we have an intersection that gets mentioned in a little clip on a local radio station about considerate drivers knowing to not be in the right-hand lane if they're driving straight. So we're hoping to remedy some of the traffic issues around that and hope that people will be very watchful for the new signage that will be going up about it. Thank you.
Councillor Knodel?
Can I ask a clarifying question about what that's going to look like just quickly? Will it become just a straight lane and a turning lane, or will there be three? One and turn?
Managing
confirm.
Director Maines.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Knodel, this is a trial period at this time and place. We won't be making major changes to the intersection. So you'll see one through lane on the left side, and the right-hand lane will be a dedicated right-hand lane. However, it will be signal controlled, so it won't be a free-flowing right turn. They will still have to stop before turning on a red light. However, once the permit, if the trial is successful and it seems to be acceptable to the community, and based on transportation standards, we'll look at making that a dedicated lane hit to the right. It's more of a complicated intersection than it would seem with the CP rail also in the area, so there'll have to be close coordination with CP rail before a redo is done at that intersection. But as said, for now, it's intended as a trial, and we hope that our drivers will enjoy the relative free flow of that lane from that side. So thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9.3, Public Services Committee. At 9.3.1, we have meeting minutes from October 11th, 2022.
Mayor Clark, I move that the council adopt the minutes of the Public Services Committee meeting that was held October 11th, 2022, as presented for the public record, for the corporate record, sorry.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Hyder.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. I would just like to give a congratulations or some sort of well done to opening the Moose Rec Center and how exciting the community is about that. So, as am I. So, well done. And I'm excited to see what the hockey season holds.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, we will vote on the motion to adopt the minutes. And that's unanimous. Moving on to item 9.3.2, Councillor Robbins, as Chair of the Public Services Committee, do you have any highlights that you would like to share?
Well, thank you. Through the chair, it's nothing but highlights at Public Services. As we all know, it's always good times. We had actually a really timely presentation from the Kirby Assembly. We had a number of people join us for the meeting to give us good news about the programming at the Viner Center and all of the changes happening there, including some funding they've been able to apply for Healthy Aging Alberta, $200,000 grant they were able to apply for. So we heard about all sorts of different programs and things they're trying, some dinners in the evening. They're still looking for volunteers, especially for Meals on Wheels. There's been some fall off because of COVID at the price of gas and things like that, but they're doing everything they can to make that volunteer happen because it's so important. So that was our guests, and then we also had the new electronic fare management system, which we were able to try out with some QR codes and a machine. And a big thank you to all of the bus drivers who were trained in that, have had the equipment in the buses, and have been talking about it. So hopefully that goes well and makes it easier for people. If you buy a bus pass regularly and you get a card instead, and you sign up for an account, if you lose your card, you're not going to lose the cost that you had put into that pass. So that's the one thing I took out of that part of the meeting that was maybe not in the minutes or highlighted well in the minutes. So overall, lots of highlights, and thanks for asking.
Awesome, thank you. Now we are moving into our new business section. At item 10.1, we have the Rural Renewal Community Designation, and the sponsor is Strategic Management and Analysis. Managing Director Pancoast, would you like to provide an overview of the item?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a motion that you may recall was voted on prior council meeting. However, that motion referenced proceeding with a community designation application subject to a third-party study. That condition with respect to the third-party study was drafted in error. So what you have in front of you is what the intention, I believe, was to proceed now with the application and in parallel to have staff pursue the necessary resources and partnerships and potential grants in order to help implement and operationalize that. So I ask your indulgence to revisit the motion to remove the limitations and consider it as now presented.
Thank you, and I appreciate you drawing that to our attention and bringing that forward to us again to review. Are there any questions or comments about the briefing note? Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark, through the chair. No, I think any opportunity to pursue any grant funding is a positive direction to go. So I'm definitely in favor of exploring this further.
All right, seeing no further speakers, we have a motion.
Through the chair, that council direct administration to submit a community designation application on behalf of the City of Medicine Hat, allocate resources, work with economic development partners, and pursue potential grant funding avenues.
I'll second.
Thank you. I should have asked are there questions or comments now, but we've already done that, so we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. All right, item 10.2, municipal planning engagement. The sponsor is strategic management and analysis. Managing Director Pancoast.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I may invite my colleague, Manager Sissons, down to the podium to assist with describing this opportunity. It's a really exciting opportunity that we hadn't necessarily planned for as part of our broader budget planning processes now close to 4 years ago. This is an opportunity for a select number of communities to engage with a very well-known, quite renowned expert in the planning field who has challenged historical thought processes as to how communities develop and grow. We have an opportunity to be part of a kickoff pilot where they have a community action lab that really is about building capacity within communities, both at a staff level, a leadership level, and a community level, in order to really start thinking about growth and economic growth and the planning considerations within all of that in a different way. Very to the point with respect to Council's strategic plan, there are a number of references that touch on the principles of this approach within our strat plan. So this really is an opportunity to accelerate our momentum in that direction and to drive a much stronger outcome. The intent really is to think more holistically about how we do our planning and our related growth for the benefit of fiscal sustainability, environmental sustainability, and improved quality of life. So this is a rare opportunity to be directly coached and advised and mentored by the expert in this field, and I welcome that opportunity and would recommend proceeding in that direction. But certainly, if there's detailed questions, we can also follow up with Manager Sissons.
Can I get a motion on the floor?
I move that council approves the participation of the City of Medicine Hat within the Strong Towns 2023 Community Action Lab, that council also directs city administration to enter into an agreement to the satisfaction of the city manager and city solicitor with the Strong Towns organization for the Community Action Lab. And finally, council approves an MOE in the amount of $212,000 with the funding source from the capital reserves, non-payable council contingency.
And I'll second.
All right, are there any, Councilor Robbins?
Yes, I had a clarification. So the amount is 212,000, but in the information from Strong Towns, it's 209,000. So why the difference between the two numbers? That's my question, but then I have a quick comment after.
Managing Director Pancoast?
Yes, thank you. It's simply a timing difference. Their original quote is based on US dollars. They provided an estimate with respect to conversion to Canadian funds, but we have relied on our Treasury team to assist in that, and the number being requested is from our Treasury team.
Councilor Robbins?
Thank you for that. That's what I assumed, but you know what they say about assuming, so I did want to ask. So thank you very much. The other thing I would say, I've been excited to learn about lots of things on council. It's been such an interesting almost year for all of us. But this Strong Towns initiative is one of the most exciting things I think that we've come across. I did manage to do some reading about Strong Towns as we were getting into our strategic planning, and I know the municipal development plan and Parks and Rec plan use the principles as well. But hearing directly from the Strong Town people about how excited they were about Medicine Hat and the things that were possible here. That was really invigorating. And I think that this particular council, we have a vision and a plan, but how to implement that, how to make that happen, how to engage the community in the discussions is so, that's the tricky part of this. It's not agreeing, strangely enough, the 9 of us really agree on what we think will work and how the vision we have for the city, but figuring out how to implement that is so difficult. And I think that this is just, as Managing Director Panko said, such an opportunity for coaching and education from really, really well-respected people. And again, their enthusiasm about Medicine Hat was striking. I just wanted to highlight one thing for me in case anyone is like, what is this all about anyway? On page 272 of the package, there's a statement in the middle, at Strong Towns we believe the following to be true. And if you just took a minute to read those points and see how, if you just replace when they say strong cities with Medicine Hat, you'll feel pretty good about the project as well. But that's really, for me, in the materials they sent, the highlights of why it's so important to be involved in this process. So I will be obviously, in case anyone was wondering, supporting it.
Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I learned about Strong Towns just prior to putting my paperwork in to run for council, and ended up listening to podcasts about it and was nerding out, I guess is the best way to say it, because of the holistic nature, as Managing Director Pancoast referred to. You know, you read through the document that we have in front of us and you see grassroots efforts, the goal to have community-driven decision-making, to have small decisions that have a great impact. Psychology, like how that is unheard of when it comes to the documents that we usually see in front of us, and it just makes it makes it make sense. It makes it human-oriented, it makes it tangible, and it makes it accessible to the people that we do this work for, which is anyone that lives in our city. So I am excited about it. I think the nice thing about it in my mind is that you don't need much to do a lot. And yeah, I'm very excited about it. So 100% in favor of moving forward with this one.
Councillor Dubanowski.
Yeah, Your Worship, just a brief comment. I too support this initiative. I mean, it comes with a cost, but I guess one of the challenges any council, past or present or future, will have to come across is whether the lens upon which we look at our city and our growth and our engagement is satisfactory, is it optimum, and what are we driving from that? And in the end, having I guess a system like Strong Towns to kind of filter that through and look and a lens to look through which we can look at our development, our growth, and as it indicated here, look at all of our growth and development management strategies in the future, to take a different view through the eyes of an expert or experts who are tasked with that, will have great benefit. So there is a cost to this. It's not, again, without some cost, but the argument is, can we afford not to allow ourselves to look through another means like Strong Towns to benefit and enhance and grow our community even better than it can be. And so I support this. It deserves the opportunity to live out its timeline, at least with our community, and see what kind of engagement we can get out of it, and ultimately what kind of derived savings or opportunities we can create because of this. So it's a departure from certainly anything we've done in the past like this, but I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you, and through the chair. So I was really excited when I saw this. and we have incorporated Strong Towns into our strategic plan, but I maybe just want to point out that this was also something that was being done by administration. So it's not just council pushing administration to do something that we're gung-ho about, but nobody else is. I'm wondering if maybe Manager Sissons could talk about how some of these values are incorporated into the MDP, but I also just wanted to say that I think it's important that we take this opportunity to have the founders and proponents of this concept come alongside our group to propel us forward in a really significant way. So thank you to everyone.
Manager Sissons?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, I mean, I think from administration side, we're very excited about this as well. We've been kind of in this world for several years now, starting with our growth management strategy back in probably 2018, 2017. And we really took a deep dive into what the financials of and costs of city building are. So looking at deep down into what we're bringing in on the revenue side and what we're expending on the operational and the capital side, and making sure that those two match up and that we're always in this positive situation. So that was kind of the foundation of where it started with the growth management strategy. That was then incorporated into our municipal development plan, which really talks a lot about applying these principles at a very high level. So if you look in the municipal development plan, it talks a lot about a transect-based approach and matching services and built infrastructure to the surrounding land use and density. So even just tonight, we have an example where we have a high-density site that we talked about, and it has really great infrastructure around it. So really matching those two things up. So being able to move forward with this, I think there are some staff within the administration that have some experience with this to really broaden that experience across all departments and divisions and have everybody moving in one direction would be a fantastic approach for an organization. And it really, like, when we get down into what it really is at its essence is it's just making sure that as a municipality, we're really focused on being financially sustainable for the long term. And they use a lot of specific data in their research and helping make decisions. So for example, looking at what is the assessment per hectare, I've pulled information on that, and it's shocking, and it's really helpful when we are making decisions long term. So I'm really excited to move forward with this if council is in agreement, and I think it's going to be a really good opportunity to really broaden the understanding within the community of our municipal development plan and some of these principles.
Thank you. Councillor McGrogan?
Thank you. And through the chair, I just wanted to say that I support this. And one of the main reasons I do is you've got a number of council members who have really done a lot of research on this independently of our city staff. And to hear city staff, as it seems, as enthusiastic as we are, usually it's one nudging the other. And so I'm pretty excited about that. And so for that, I just want to verbally throw my support behind this. And I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's really going to help us really kind of set the direction physically, kind of what does it really look like? And that's when I went through the presentation. It was more the meat and potatoes of it seemed very doable, and I really like. It's not as theoretical. It's more earthy. So thank you.
Okay, so I am also very excited and in support of this. Not only will it help us to build a stronger, more resilient and more prosperous city, but it also, given the profile that Strong Towns as an organization has, it has the potential to increase our profile and share with a lot of other communities what are the good things that we do and be an example for other communities to similarly consider their long-term viability and resilience as a community. So I'm very excited, and let's vote. And that's unanimous. Moving on to item 10.3, consolidation opportunity, and this too is strategic management and analysis. I will turn it over to Managing Director Pancoast for an overview.
Thank you, Your Worship. Shifting from the strategic to the tactical, this is an opportunity where we see a lot that has become available on the open market. It's a residential lot, but the city happens to own the rest of the block that this lot is on. So we see this as a emergent, reactive, strategic opportunity to secure control of the full block. And what we see that bringing is an opportunity to widen the longer-term development opportunity and to be able to accelerate whatever future vision we see for that block going forward. So this isn't something that had been budgeted, so we are coming to council today with a request for access to working capital from Investments in Hat land funds in order to confirm the conditional offer that is on this property.
Thank you, Managing Director Pancoast. Councillor Dumanowski, do you have a question? Or
I was just going to move that council approve a budget amendment for $168,000 to allow for the purchase of 817 2nd Street Southeast.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments about this briefing note? Councillor Dumanowski.
Well, Your Worship, it's strange. It's just one small piece of property, but I've seen this sitting there waiting for our taking for many years, quite frankly. In fact, at one point, we did have an allocation of funds for this property, and it sat in our, this little outlier reserve, and it must have been absorbed at some point into our greater funds because it wasn't going anywhere. But there was always a plan to acquire this property at some future point and be patient with it, but I can't believe all these years. So it's just strange how time moves forward, and here's the opportunity. And as you said, there's no immediate purpose for it, but it is a consolidation of lands there that will fit nicely with any future development we pursue. Thank you.
Councillor Canodal.
Thanks, Mayor Clark, through the chair. It is the evening of brownfield potential, and I'm in support of getting organized and being a little bit more strategic about our decision making, and I see this just being another thoughtful decision that could create more opportunity, I guess, strategic opportunity, rather than just one and done. Okay, we're going to make this decision over here and this decision over here. Let's go in order and make sure that we've got a sequential decision-making strategy in place, which is truly the heart of Managing Director Pancoast's work, and IMH, of course, everyone else too. But it's in your name. It's in the name of your department. So yes, I'm in support.
Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair, I've played a lot of Monopoly in my life, and sometimes you don't want to build on Connecticut, but you still don't want someone else to have it and try and get it from them later. So I understand the request, and the budget amount is completely reasonable, but I do actually have an actual question. So my question is, what is the cost of maintaining the property in terms of insuring it? Like, there's going to ultimately be a long-term plan of what happens to the residents that's there. But in the meantime, so in addition to the cost of buying it, there'll also be a cost, I assume, of maintaining it, insuring it, cleaning up the lawn. And do we have any sense of what that might be? And if not, whose budget does it get absorbed into? Because I see no request for that here.
Managing Director Pancoast.
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Robbins, and I do have Manager Butterfield online if she'd like to supplement my response. But ultimately, because this is emergent, we don't have a long-term plan in place as of yet as to what we plan to do with the full block. Our assumption until we land what that plan looks like is even a possible rental of the space until we understand what we'd like to do with that lot. Alternatively, we could look at an option to, we have checked with the Realtor, they have indicated it's potentially possible to move and relocate the home. So that's an option that we could consider. And alternatively, we do have regular property management for city-owned lands that we would absorb these costs into as part of our regular property management services.
I have I have at least one question. So it's noted in the briefing note that there's a gas well on an adjacent property. Is there a risk to us in not purchasing this?
Through your worship and back to your worship on this, yeah, the abandoned gas well is proximal to this location. As a result, there will be a required setback from that well of any potential development on this lot. But similar to other areas within our city that have this type of situation, we look to work closely with our planning department, with IMH, to maximize the extent of developable land while maintaining that safe distance from that well. So in this particular case, we were aware of it, and that has been incorporated into some of the, or into the briefing note you see here tonight. But no, the well is maintained in a safe condition, and sufficient offsets will be in place to ensure that any future development here will also be in that safe situation as well. But certainly having control of the adjoining lot to that proximal gas well is advantageous to us. It does provide us with more flexibility in terms of the future development versus if it was in the hands of a private developer, we would likely have to intervene in terms of some of our requirements for management of that site as pertains to the gas well. So I believe us owning this lot puts us in a better position than if we did not own the lot as pertains to that well.
Thank you. And I see that Manager Butterfield is on the line. Did you have anything to add to Managing Director Panko's comments?
Through your worship, thank you. No, I don't. I think, well, besides the fact I do think it is a great strategic purchase for us in the future development and highest and best use for that block. So I, of course, am in support of this budget amendment and, of course, this purchase. As well with that house, because it is vacant, it does have the opportunity to potentially be rented as well in the interim. So that's also an option. The house is in really good condition. So I feel like this came up at the right time and we have ultimate options with it, or unlimited options, sorry.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, we will vote on the motion. And that is unanimous. There are no notices of motion before us, so this meeting is adjourned.